Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be exploring the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, which summarizes the book Pattern Breakers: Why Some Startups Change the Future. That's by Mike Maples Jr. and Peter Ziebelman.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. It really digs into what makes certain startups just wildly successful. And it's not about just, following the usual
Not like
playbook.
throwing out the playbook, right? Like
Yeah,
these are the startups that rewrite the rules entirely.
exactly. And that's where inflection theory comes in, which the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu does a great job of explaining.
So it's not just about having a good idea. It's about recognizing those huge shifts, those inflections in technology or society, or even just in how people behave.
Yeah, you can almost think of it like a surfer who can just spot that perfect wave forming before anyone else. These startups ride these waves of change, and that's what really propels them to success.
Okay, so how about a concrete example? I know Anil Nathu in his guide brings up Airbnb.
Airbnb, that's a perfect example. They didn't just make booking hotels a little bit easier or a little bit cheaper. They changed how we think about travel lodging altogether.
Right.
Yeah, they tapped into this whole sharing economy thing and just and basically built a movement around it.
And it wasn't a better version of something that already existed. It
Yeah.
was it was a whole new category.
Exactly, yeah. And Lyft did something very similar, with transportation, that they weren't content with just being a slightly better taxi company,
Yeah.
you know?
They saw how smartphones and GPS and mobile payments were changing everything, and they built a whole new system around ride sharing.
And the 1 Hour Guide brings up another really fascinating example, which is Twitch, which actually started as a 247 live streaming platform. Can you believe that?
I remember when Twitch was just starting out. It's amazing how they've evolved.
Yeah. They recognize the huge growth in online gaming and the rise of high-speed internet, and basically pivoted their whole platform to focus on game streaming. And it was that timing that made all the difference.
Well, speaking of timing, I know I've missed the boat on things before. Launching too early can be just as bad as being too late.
Yeah, the book talks about that a lot, the whole timing trap, and web TV is a great example of that. They were way ahead of their time with internet-based television, but broadband just wasn't widely available yet, so no one really wanted it. On the flip side, Netflix totally nailed the timing with their streaming service. The technology was ready, consumer demand was there, they just boom took off.
So you've got to ride the wave at just the right moment.
Absolutely, yeah. But what I find even more interesting is that the book argues that these pattern-breaking startups aren't just better, They're so different that they're almost incomparable to what came before.
Yeah. They're not playing the same game. They're creating a new one.
Exactly. Tesla is a perfect example. They didn't just make a slightly better electric car. They challenged the entire perception of what an electric car could be. High performance, stylish, desirable.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to compete in the existing car market. They redefined it.
Right.
And it's like Airbnb again. They didn't set out to be a slightly cheaper hotel. They offered a whole new experience, a new way to think about travel and lodging. They had what the book calls a strong insight.
And the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu dives into that with Google's search algorithm, right?
Yes, absolutely. Google recognized that the key to ranking websites wasn't just keywords. It was how those websites linked to each other, and that was a totally groundbreaking insight at the time.
Mhm.
And it just so happened to be perfectly aligned with the just massive growth of the internet.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, why other search engines like Yahoo didn't make that same leap.
That's right, and it really highlights how crucial having that strong, that non-obvious insight can be for a startup success.
So it's more than just having a good idea. It's about having an idea that changes the way things work fundamentally.
And the book even suggests that these truly insightful founders, they don't just predict the future, they're already living in it.
That's like they have a time machine or something.
Well, not quite, but they're deeply engaged with just cutting edge trends, emerging technologies. Look at Elon Musk. He was involved in space exploration and AI and sustainable energy long before he ever started, companies like SpaceX and Tesla.
They're not just observing the future, they're immersed in it.
Exactly. And by being immersed in these, these emerging worlds, they can spot the patterns that most people haven't even noticed yet.
This makes me think about how easy it is to get stuck in what's working right now.
Yeah.
But, that can make you miss out on what's coming next.
Yeah, and that's what the book calls the trap of the present, you know? Focusing only on what's working today can actually hold you back from making those big breakthroughs.
Yeah.
They argue that the present is just a reflection of past shifts.
It's like driving by only looking in the rearview mirror.
Precisely. You need to look ahead. You need to anticipate the future, not just optimize the present. And Netflix is another great example of this. They didn't just focus on, their really successful DVD rental business. They recognized the potential of streaming very early on, and were willing to disrupt their own model.
So they were actively preparing for a future that most people hadn't even imagined yet.
Exactly. And it's so interesting because the authors actually, they caution against relying too heavily on what customers say they want.
Exactly.
Because often what customers are describing are just solutions within their current reality. They're not necessarily describing what they'll want or need in the future.
Yeah, people might not even be able to articulate what they'll want 5 years from now because the technology or the context might not even exist yet.
Right. And that's why these pattern-breaking startups are so fascinating to me. They're not just reacting to the world around them, they're actively shaping it.
And that brings us to another crucial point that the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu emphasizes. It's not just about finding any customers or investors in those early stages.
Right. It's about finding the right ones, those who really understand the vision and believe in it.
So it's more about carefully selecting who you bring into the fold rather than just trying to sell to anyone who will listen.
Yeah, the book actually talks about how founders should be selecting their early customers, not just selling to them.
It's almost like curating a community rather than just building a customer base.
You could say that. The guide uses the example of Okta, the cloud identity management company. They specifically targeted companies who were already embracing cloud computing because they knew that those companies would immediately understand the value of their solution.
It's like they handpicked the people who will become the foundation of their movement.
Exactly. And Brian Chesky, the co-founder of Airbnb, he took that approach even further. He personally recruited some of the very early Airbnb hosts, just built those relationships one by one.
So it's about finding those individuals who are just as passionate about the idea as the founder is.
Yes, those early adopters, they become your biggest champions. They help you spread the word.
It's inspiring, but it also sounds incredibly challenging. Like it's not just building a product. It's almost like building a movement.
And that's precisely what these pattern-breaking startups do. They don't just launch products. They launch movements that can redefine entire industries.
They're not just playing the game differently. They're changing the rules of the game entirely.
That's it. They create entirely new paradigms. Take Tesla, Airbnb, Salesforce. They didn't just offer slightly better alternatives. They introduced wholly new ways of thinking and operating. And according to the book, they achieved that by mastering 3 key elements of launching a movement.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are those elements?
So first, they need a compelling story, a narrative that really captures people's imaginations and inspires them to believe in a different future. Tesla's mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy is a perfect example. It's a story that resonates far beyond just cars.
Yeah, it's a story that people can really get behind. It's a story with a larger purpose.
Exactly. The second element is cultivating a coalition of passionate early adopters. People who are willing to champion that vision, and Airbnb did this brilliantly by fostering a community of early hosts who were just as excited about home sharing as the founders themselves.
They weren't just customers, they were part of something bigger.
Right. And that brings us to the third element, which is using language that creates a clear distinction. They need to use language that separates them from the status quo. So Spotify, for example, they didn't position themselves as just another music store. They introduced this whole concept of streaming music, and that completely reframed how people thought about accessing and consuming music.
They didn't just offer a different product, they offered a new way of thinking.
The power of language, it can truly spark a movement by helping people see the world in a new way.
This 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu is so insightful. I'm feeling inspired, but I'm also starting to understand the sheer scale of what it takes to truly be a pattern breaker.
It's definitely a challenging path, but the potential rewards are massive. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore even more insights from the book and from Anil's brilliant summary.
One thing that really struck me in the One-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu was the emphasis on storytelling.
Yeah, it's not enough to just have a fantastic product. You need to craft a narrative that really resonates, that connects with people on an emotional level.
It's like those brands that just have stories that stick with you, long after you've seen their ad or used their product. You're not just buying a thing, you're buying into an idea.
The book uses Lyft as a prime example of this, and I think it's a really good one. They didn't just create a ride-sharing app. They built a whole narrative around community-powered transportation, and they did something really interesting with their storytelling that I think is worth highlighting.
Okay, what was that?
They had three distinct heroes woven into their narrative.
3 heroes. That's a unique approach. Who were they?
All right, so first you had the writers, right? For them, Lyft was the solution to all the frustrations of traditional taxis. Unreliable service, difficulty finding a ride, the hassle of parking, all that stuff. It was a story about making their lives easier.
So for the writers, Lyft was the hero of convenience.
Exactly. Then you had the drivers. For them, Lyft offered economic empowerment, a chance to be part of a movement that was changing how we think about work and transportation. It wasn't just a way to make money, it was about being part of something bigger.
So Lyft was the hero of opportunity for the drivers.
Yeah. And then finally you had the investor. For them, Lyft presented a chance to invest in a company that was poised to disrupt a massive industry and create entirely new markets. It was a story about revolutionizing urban mobility.
So each stakeholder group had their own reason to see Lyft as the hero.
Exactly. And they didn't just rely on words to tell this story. They used symbols too, right? Think about that iconic pink mustache.
Oh yeah, it definitely made them stand out.
Oh yeah, that pink mustache became a symbol of the entire Lyft movement. It was like a visual shorthand for their story of community and connection.
It's amazing how a simple visual can become so powerful.
Right. It's all about creating a brand identity that resonates emotionally. And it's not just Lyft. Think about the brands you love, the ones you really connect with on a deeper level. What stories are they telling? What are the narratives that they're weaving?
The brands that really stick with me are the ones that stand for something, that have a mission that goes beyond just selling products.
And that's what separates these pattern-breaking startups from the pack, right? They're not just peddling products, they're selling a vision of the future.
And to achieve that vision, they often have to be willing to challenge the norms, to be a little bit disagreeable.
You hit the nail on the head. The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu talks about this concept of being productively disagreeable.
So it's not about just being difficult for the sake of it.
No, not at all. It's about having the courage to challenge the status quo, to stand by your principles, even when others might doubt you.
It's that willingness to say no to things that don't align with your vision, even if it means missing out in the short term.
The book talks about how Airbnb had to push back against this deeply ingrained belief that people wouldn't want to stay in a stranger's home. And Elon Musk faced constant skepticism about the viability of electric cars, but they held firm to their convictions.
So being productively disagreeable is about using those challenges and confrontations to refine your vision and really push for something truly groundbreaking.
And the book also explores how established corporations can adopt this pattern-breaking mindset, even with all the inherent bureaucracy and risk aversion that often comes with being a large company.
That seems like a tall order.
Yeah.
Big companies can be so resistant to change. It's like trying to turn a giant ship on a dime.
It's definitely more challenging, but it can be done. The book uses Microsoft under Satya Nadella as a case study. They were seen as this aging tech giant, kind of clinging to their old ways.
But they've made a pretty remarkable comeback in recent years.
They have, and a big part of that comeback was acknowledging their own bias of success. They realized that they were too focused on protecting their existing business and not open enough to new
So
opportunities.
they had to challenge their own assumptions about what would work in the future.
Exactly. They had to cultivate a more startup-like culture, one that embraces risk-taking and experimentation. And that shift is really reflected in the success of their cloud computing platform, Azure.
So even giant corporations can learn to break free from the patterns that are holding them back.
It all comes down to having the humility to recognize when those patterns are no longer serving you and the courage to embrace new ways of thinking.
This deep dive into the 1 hour guide by Anil Nathu has been incredibly insightful. It's made me realize that pattern breaking isn't just about business, it's about a whole approach to life.
Oh, I completely agree. It's about challenging assumptions, questioning the status quo, and believing in our own ability to create something new.
It's about embracing the unknown, taking risks,
Yeah.
and never losing that sense of wonder and possibility.
And one of the things that really stuck with me from Anil's guide was this idea that the hero of your story shouldn't be you.
Wait, what? But isn't the founder the hero of the startup journey? They're the ones with the vision, the ones taking all the risks.
That's what a lot of founders think, but the book actually suggests that that making yourself the hero can actually backfire. It can make you seem self-centered, and it can make it harder for people to connect with your story.
So if the founder isn't the hero, then who is?
The customer.
The customer. That's an interesting twist.
It makes sense when you think about it, right? People are drawn to stories where they can see themselves as the main character. They want to be the hero of their own journey.
So how do you make the customer the hero of your startup story?
By positioning your product or service as the tool or the guide that helps them overcome a challenge, achieve a goal, or transform their lives.
So you're like the wise mentor, helping them unlock their potential.
Exactly. The book uses Lyft again as an example here. They didn't just talk about how great their app was. They told a story about how their service empowered riders to get where they needed to go more easily, how it helped drivers earn extra income on their own terms, and how it contributed to a more sustainable transportation system.
You focus on the positive impact they were having on people's lives, not on how great they were as a company.
Precisely. And that's what made their story so compelling. People could see themselves as the hero of that story.
It's about showcasing how your company helps people achieve their goals, not about bragging about yourself.
And it goes beyond just marketing. It's about a genuine belief that your customers are the heroes of the story. It's about being truly customer centric.
I love that perspective. It reminds me of another great point that Anil highlighted in the 1 hour guide. He talked about how pattern breaking startups don't just force a comparison, they force a choice.
That's such a crucial insight. A lot of startups try to position themselves as simply better than the existing options, right? But that keeps them playing the same game.
They're stuck competing on the same terms instead of changing the game entirely.
Pattern breaking startups, they force a choice between two fundamentally different futures.
So it's not about saying we're better. It's about saying we're offering something completely different that will change everything.
Tesla didn't just compare themselves to other car companies. They forced a choice between fossil fuel dependence and a sustainable future. Lyft didn't try to be a better taxi service. They presented a vision of a more community-driven and technologically advanced transportation
They
system.
made it clear that you had to pick a side, the old way or the new way.
And that's what grabs people's attention. It's not about features and benefits. It's about values and beliefs. It's about aligning yourself with a movement that people want to be a part of.
This is all so inspiring, but it also makes me wonder, can anyone be a pattern breaker, or does it require some rare combination of vision, timing, and audacity?
That's a great question, and it's something that we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive. The book actually offers some fascinating insights into how anyone can cultivate the mindset and the skills to challenge the status quo and create something truly extraordinary.
So in the last part of our deep dive into the 1 hour guide by Anil Nathu, we were talking about whether anyone can be a pattern breaker.
Right, and it's a question the book tackles head on. It's easy to look at figures like Elon Musk or Brian Chesky and think, oh, they just have some unique genius that can't be replicated.
Yeah, it can feel intimidating, like these people are just wired differently.
But pattern breakers actually argues that that it's not about, some innate superpower. It's more like a skill, a way of thinking that can be developed.
So it's not that these founders are inherently special. It's just that they've learned how to think in a way that allows them to spot those patterns and break them.
That's a great way to put it. And the book actually outlines some key habits and mindsets that that anyone can cultivate to become more innovative.
Okay, so what are the secrets? How do we unlock our inner pattern breaker?
Well, first and foremost, it's about cultivating a deep curiosity. These pattern-breaking founders, they're voracious learners. They're constantly asking questions, exploring new ideas, and immersing themselves in different fields.
They're not just sticking to their lane, they're venturing out and exploring different perspectives.
Exactly. And they're not just passively consuming information, they're actively seeking it out. They're reading, attending conferences, talking to people from all walks of life.
It's like they're constantly trying to expand their horizons and challenge their own assumptions.
Right. And along with that curiosity comes a willingness to experiment. They're not afraid to try things that might seem crazy, to fail fast and learn from their mistakes.
They understand that the path to innovation isn't always a straight line.
It's more like a winding road with lots of detours and unexpected discoveries along the way. And to navigate that road, you need persistence. These founders, they don't give up easily.
Yeah, they have that grit factor, that determination to see their vision through.
And it's not just about being stubborn. It's about having that unwavering belief in what you're doing, even when others might doubt you.
So curiosity, experimentation, persistence. What else?
Well, adaptability is crucial. They're willing to change course when necessary, to adjust their plans based on feedback and new information. They understand that the world is constantly changing and they need to be able to change with it.
They're not attached to their ideas, they're attached to the process of innovation itself.
That's a great way to put it. They're constantly iterating, refining, and evolving their approach.
This 1 hour guide by Anil Nathu has really been eye-opening. It's made me realize that pattern breaking isn't just about startups or technology. It's a philosophy that can apply to any aspect of life.
I couldn't agree more. It's about challenging assumptions, questioning the status quo, and believing in our own ability to create something new.
It's about embracing the unknown, taking risks, and never losing that sense of wonder and possibility.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to remember that pattern breaking isn't just about, achieving massive success or building billion-dollar companies.
It's about making a difference, no matter how big or small.
It's about leaving the world a little bit better than we found it, inspiring others to think differently and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's about recognizing that we all have the potential to be pattern breakers in our own unique ways.
So what seemingly crazy idea are you holding on to? What pattern are you going to break?
That's something for all of us to think about. Thank you for joining us today. Visit the 1 Hour Guide website for more business insights by Anil Nathu.